Welcome to Abnormal, the podcast for normal people who want to do abnormal things. Today's guest went from being a pro rugby player to becoming the CEO of one of the fastest growing wellness brands out there, Puresport. Dan Temm's journey is about resilience, reinvention, and building a company that's changing the way people think about the health and performance industries. From life on the rugby pitch to leading a brand with a bold vision, his story is full of lessons that we can all take something from, hopefully. Dan Temm, welcome to Abnormal. How are you doing?
Good to be here, Pete. Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Hey, thank you for making the time. And one thing sometimes I like to spring on the guests as a first question is, and I'd love to do it on you as well. What's one thing that the listeners should know about you, Dan, that will give them the best context for this conversation?
I'm not really particularly good at any one thing. I think as I've kind of gone through business, I found like people who are entrepreneurial people, leaders in business, a lot of them are really specifically good at one thing. I'm actually not good at anything really. I'm pretty broad brush, and I think that's kind of come from my journey through sport into business. I think it's kind of set me up for quite a good generalist capability. But when people ask me, what's that one thing that you're really good at? I actually don't really have an answer for that question. So hopefully that gives some hope to some people out there who maybe aren't specialists.
It definitely gives hope to me. I'll tell you that for free. Jack of all trades, master of none. But I'm sure there's a bit of being humble in there as well. So Jack, really interested in your story, Dan. I saw Puresport is a brand that I've followed for a long time. And actually, funny story, when I DM'd your team on Instagram, I had a conversation history going back 5-6 years from when I was at Exeter playing rugby, because I was injured at the time with an ACL, and I was trying to get some products into Exeter from Puresport to help my recovery. And they were super skeptical about, whether they were tested, whether they were on the banned substance list, because correct me if I'm wrong, they started out with the CBD products and all that sort of stuff. So I was really deep into the wormhole of research. And so it was funny when I was trying to get you on the podcast and I saw all my previous DMs to you guys, and super responsive as well. It was brought me back flashbacks from, I was like, oh yeah, I remember having a really positive experience with these guys. And so I want to talk about your story then. How did you kind of get introduced to this brand? We'll go back way back when in the rugby and all that sort of stuff, but I want to know what's your introduction to Puresport? How did that come about?
Yeah, just quickly, that's great to hear that about your interaction with the brand, and that's something that we really pride ourselves on. We've replied to every single DM in the last 5.5 years, 6 years, as long as the brand's been going. Any single person that tags us in a story, anybody that messages us, we don't miss a single
That's amazing.
reply, and that's something that we really hang our hat on. So yeah, what got me into Puresport? Well, I think there's almost a bit about going back to go forward. And for me, growing up, I grew up in New Zealand in a place called Rotorua, which is middle of the North Island. And my whole life, I was absolutely obsessed about sport. If there was a sport I could do, I would play it, water polo, hockey, tennis, rugby, cricket. I was just obsessed. Anything that would get me out of my homework, I was up for it. So when I finished school, I really wanted to be a professional cricketer. I was better at cricket than I was at rugby, but also the way that the summers lined up, we finished our summer in sort of February, March time. And then obviously over here in the Northern Hemisphere, you're kind of coming into it. And my mum had an English passport. My mum was English, sorry. So I had an English passport. And I was like, right, I'm going to go to England and I'm going to try and be a professional cricketer. So I left in March 2009 with my cricket bag full of stuff and some clothes, heading over here as a young 18-year-old, thinking you're a fully grown man at that point. But looking back now, I'm like, gosh, that's pretty carnage. And came over here, with a dream of kind of doing that. I initially thought I'd probably play a season in England, then I'd go back and play a season in Australia and just sort of bounce back and forth a few summers. Anyway, came over and didn't actually play very well. Ended up drinking loads of pints, having loads of fun. It was an amazing time.
Oh, British culture, eh?
British culture, yes. Plus loads of rained out games. It's oh, boys, the game's getting called off. And then someone brings in a box of beers into the change rooms. Oh, well, should we have a few beers? Oh, okay, let's do that. So I really loved it. I really loved getting involved in the culture. I think the cricket's such an interesting game, and you can have so many different age ranges within teams. That's all team sports, but I think cricket specifically, you can get people right up to 50, mid-50s still playing, and you don't necessarily get that the same in rugby and other places. So when I came to the end of that, I just hadn't done any traveling, which was one of the main reasons I wanted to come to Europe, see Europe right on the doorstep, because I was kind of coaching all the juniors. I was playing twice on the weekend. So one of the lads in the team said, "Do you want to come and play at the local club, Old Crosslands?" I did that. I played really, really well. And from there, I kicked on to Otley. From there, I kicked on to Newcastle, and then ended up doing a bit of years in the Championship, which we can come back to. But I, when I was doing rugby, I was also doing business, and I was like, oh, I actually really, really enjoy this. The like commercial parts
Mm.
of it, really understanding it, like trying to think about those similarities between like the competitiveness of sport and business. And when I was at Bedford, which was 2019-20 season, a teammate of mine had founded Puresport with another friend of his, and I'd had another business at the time that I'd started with my wife, a clothing business. And so we were just a little bit further along in understanding business, forecasting, stock, cash, like these sorts of things. So it was literally just helping each other out in the changing room. Like, oh, do you know about that? Have you thought about this? We used to joke about like at the back of the bus to away games, we'd be like doing a few business things while everyone else was like,
Playing
listen to
cards.
music, playing cards and stuff. And sure enough, the other business that I was involved with, that we had, it was very much a run up to Christmas business. And so once Christmas was done, we kind of like really tailed off there. It was a cashmere clothing business for like affluent mums of London, basically. And so I said, well, once we get through Christmas, I could start helping out with Pure Sport a little bit more if you wanted. And we sort of worked out a deal. I invested all my savings at the time, and we started that in sort of like January, February more formally. And then sure enough, in March, we went into that first lockdown. We went up to Newcastle actually as Bedford on the Saturday. We got humped by 50 points. That was the year that Newcastle had dropped down from the Premiership. We went out for a few beers in the Toon, and then woke up on the Sunday. There was like whispers of like Boris is going to send us into lockdown, and we were kind of joking about it. Then sure enough, Monday that happened, and we all got put onto furlough, and it was the perfect time for us because we were given 80% of our rugby salaries, but we had all of our time back. So we're like, well, we don't need to pay ourselves to do pure sport. Let's just pile in, and the more time we gave it, the more it grew. And I think what really drew me towards it in the beginning was like that intersection between sport and supplements. I think like Pure Sport was really founded on the premise. Grayson and Adam, who had founded it, they got into CBD similar to what you're talking about. They had bad injuries. They were getting fed the tramadol cocktail all the time, and they were just like, that's just not that good for me. Like, and I think that's the premise in which Pure Sport was started, was around the shortcut culture that the world finds itself in. Like, hey, I can't play this weekend, or here's a tramadol, here's a steroid shot. Like, get on with that. It's someone walks into a GP and says they can't sleep, they get given a sleeping pill, and people are looking for a quick fad diet. So the premise of the business was founded on that shortcut culture, initially through CBD. And that I was really drawn to that because I love sport. I'm a big believer that everything you want is on the other side of hard. And all of those sorts of things really spoke to me. So it just kind of, it ended up working out really well.
That's awesome, man. Like, what a cool story. And yeah, I mean, that the whole COVID thing with going into lockdown in the UK, it was so tough for so many people. And I remember I was in the UK at the time. That was when my Exeter contract was finishing. And what a great use of time. What a
Mhm.
fantastic use of time. Like, perfect timing. I'm very interested then, like, we'll talk more about pure sport, but doing business with friends. Like, I'm sure it's not always easy. You don't have to, I'm not asking about details and things, but how did you kind of come to an agreement as to you're going to help them out, and then are we going to do this full time or long term? Is there a rev share? Is shareholders? How did you kind of come to that and approach those conversations?
Yeah, so that was an interesting thing at the time, and I was lucky because I was coming from experience of having my own business and being involved in working at other people's businesses before that. Whereas a lot of rugby players don't have that experience, so this kind of like stepping into the business world is really new. So when we were talking about doing a deal, I was very forthcoming with like, hey, I'll put some money up, like this is your baby. You've got it to this point now where it's doing, 7, 8K revenue a month, and it's got a little bit of something going on. Um, I'm not asking for anything for free. I'm happy to give my time. I'm happy to put some money in. And I put in 10 grand at the time, which doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it was actually all the money I had. We'd the year before we'd bought a house. So it was literally all my savings. So I think to Grayson and Adam at the time, that was a good sign of like, okay, well, yeah, he's putting his money out here. Plus, he's already been, helping us out for the last 3 months doing stuff because he's sort of passionate about it. And I think one thing that was good for us is we weren't the best of friends coming into it. You know, I think like it's so hard, isn't it? You hear things on both sides of the coin. You hear best friends that go into business that it's the best thing that they ever did. It's amazing. They know each other. You hear other sides of it, like went into this with my best friend and it didn't work out. It was absolute carnage. And um, so yeah, we kind of approached it in that way. And I think that throughout those first 4.5 years, the skill sets were very different, you know, so that kind of like meant that things worked. Actually, in 2021, Adam went across to LA to go and play rugby for the Giltinis coming out of
Ah, right.
COVID. Yeah, he was like he'd had a bit of a rough time up at Scotland with injuries and various things, and he was like, "Oh, I just want to go over there and live a bit of a different life." So at that time, he actually ended up selling quite a lot of his shareholding to Grayson and I, and we worked out a bit of a deal there. He still remains a shareholder in the business now. And then Grayson ended up exiting at the end of 2023, so November 2023. So, yeah, I'd say like it's just like any relationship, right? Like it needs work. And honestly, there's like times in which those were the most brutal, tough conversations I've ever had in my life. You know, like some of the things you don't agree on or all that sort of stuff. But yeah, the experience in that first 3.5 years of what we built and what we did together, what was good.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head there. Like business with friends, that you hear horror stories, but you also hear really romanticized stories as
Mm.
well. So are you still in contact with those two guys? The obviously two
Yeah, so
original founders.
yeah, I speak to Adam. Like Adam's still a shareholder, as I said. Grayson's no longer anymore. He exited basically in November 23. Then he sold up quite a lot of his shares mid last year, and then he just recently sold up the rest of his shares earlier, a couple of months ago. So don't speak to him as much. It wasn't as a happy ending really on that side of it. He unfortunately had a divorce and various other things that made the exit of that like really, really complicated. So we don't speak much anymore, but I think like what we did together was amazing. And like I couldn't have done it without him. He couldn't have done it without me. You know, as I said, like those bringing together of those different skill sets was just good timing. And I think what's really tough about business that no one tells you coming into it is like it will change faster than you can, especially in a fast, growing business like this. Like the requirements it has from you, your skill set, how you need to evolve for the team, like all these sorts of things. Like one of the things I try and explain to people now, like sorry, I do so many sporting business analogies, but it's probably it's going to resonate with
It's
you. Like
perfect for me.
it's like, my first 3 years at Pure Sport were like, you were a player just playing 80 minutes extra time every single week, doing whatever it took, hitting every single ruck, and then you kind of go into this bit where you need to be a bit more of a player coach. And any of us who have played with player coaches know it's really tough because you got one foot in the camp with the boys where you're trying to sit at the back of the bus and be there. And the next minute you're telling people on a Tuesday afternoon they're cut from the team. And so that's quite tough. You're trying to bring people along, but you're also trying to play well and set a good example. And then you go into this transition of being more of a coach where it's like, hey guys, here's the game plan. But when that happens on a really accelerated process, it's really tough because all three of those things, they're very different skill sets. And what made you a good player 4 years ago doesn't mean you necessarily know the answers to the game plan now, even though you're the one setting the game plan. So I'm really in that transition of being a coach now. And I'm not one of these entrepreneurial, business leaders who really struggles with that micromanagement, letting go of stuff, all those sorts of things. Like I've come through team sport my whole life. I believe that the biggest, most successful things are built by great groups of people. I like the thing I get the biggest buzz about is seeing the team work hard to bring something together and get those wins, get those results. And I'm very much someone who can be like, hey guys, here's the game plan. You guys are actually great players now, so go out and play the game. If it's going to be raining on Saturday and we need to change the game plan, we need to come back together and just tighten it up a little bit. Like, let's talk about that. And my job now is to really like empower those people to feel confident to play the game, but also to make sure we've got the right players playing the right positions at the right moments in time. Because if I put people in to play fly half, who've never played fly half before, that's not only not good for them, it's not good for the rest of the team. So like I've got quite a good understanding of that now, but that has been difficult.
Do you think, I mean, great analogy, but do you think your time as a professional athlete has helped you arrive at that lesson earlier than maybe other people would have?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think One of the things we talk about is like we're a we business, we're an I business. And I think in business, there's a lot of I's that happens. I did this, that was my idea, all that sort of stuff. Whereas, in a team, or like in a team sport, people have a good understanding. Like, hey, if I have to go and play, if I'm a fullback and I have to go and play on the wing for a few weeks because someone's injured or whatever, I can go and do that, and that's what's best for the team. Whereas in business, a lot of people are like, well, that doesn't suit my LinkedIn profile, or that's not the title I was looking for, or these sorts of things. So I don't really want to go and do that. So I think that has I think, like, back to what I said before of I don't really have any skills. I think the skill that I think anybody in this team would say that I am is like, oh, Dan's a good leader. And that's where I kind of like really like try and hang my hat of like, I'm someone who can get everyone rowing in the same direction, believing people in like that we can achieve something together, and like really motivating people to do that. So I think like that background in sport of kind of always been around kind of like the leadership circles, or like being someone who's really passionate about what why sometimes is there these things in sport that happen that no one can explain. How did Leicester City win the
Yeah,
Premiership
yeah.
football? How do these groups of people come? How do Australia walk out to on Saturday after being written
In
off
Ellis
after
Park,
losing
or
one
yeah, South
Alice,
Africa.
with 500,000 South Africans tweeting about how garbage they are at half time and win a game. And like that sort of stuff has always become so fascinating to me. And whatever it is, it always comes down to the leadership group and the culture of the organization. And I really love the saying, like, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I do kind of like believe in that. I believe that strategy is important, but actually like having a group of people who are just like so tenacious and wanting to win, I think is also really powerful. So because I've always been like really interested in that part of it, back to what I even said about cricket, I'm a 19-year-old lad out there. There's a 55-year-old opening batsman. How's he thinking about the game? What's he doing? How's he setting up? How's he getting ready? All these, sorts of things. So I think sport has helped me into the person that I am. I don't think that necessarily transcends into, I couldn't go and be the CEO of some 200-person organization that's well established and they don't need tenacious people who just want to win.
Mm. Not yet. Not yet,
Not yet.
maybe.
Maybe.
So, I mean, you said something interesting there, Dan. It's like about culture, right? And I don't know about you, but since I've retired from rugby, I've worked at a few companies. And um, coming from sports background, I can confidently say that I was part of some really, really strong, successful cultures, some winning cultures. I was part of the Exo setup that won the double. We won the Premiership, we won Europe. We were a very successful team. I don't think I had a hand to play in that, but I was part of the squad, and it was a great culture. And then from that, I've then worked in offices and startups and scale ups that every company that I've been a part of say culture is everything for us. Culture is everything for us, and honestly, it makes me gag in my mouth sometimes. Everyone says it's like a family here, it's like a family here. And that just makes me sick, because if you're part of a family, you wouldn't fire a family over bad performance. You'd get around your family, you'd speak to them and all that sort of stuff. But I'm interested for Pure Sport because you are the CEO. You're an ex-professional athlete yourself. You've got a very different background to the other CEOs that I've worked for or have heard about. What is it about the Pure Sport culture then that is genuine and sets a genuine strong culture for the company?
Am I allowed to ask you a question first?
For sure.
What made, when you think back to like, you spoke very passionately about Exeter and what made it like that it was a great culture. From your memory, what made it great?
Oh, there were so many things. It was a very honest culture, very, very honest. Super transparent feedback. Every Monday morning, we'd have a whole player squad meeting where we would debrief the weekend, be very honest with each other. Anyone could talk, which I loved. You hear stories about other rugby teams or sports teams which are quite divided, and the veterans get to talk and the internationals get to talk, the leadership group gets to talk. I was in the academy when I first joined, and if I would have stood up and spoken, everyone would have listened. And
Yeah.
that's not because it's me. That's just because of the culture. I
Nice.
didn't most of the time, but it was that kind of environment where you felt like you could.
Yeah.
Equally, we also had a great time off the field. We worked
Mhm.
super, super hard when we were training. We were all pointing in the same direction in terms of what we wanted to achieve, but
Mhm.
we all got along off the field. basically all of us, right? You're obviously going to not get along with some people and whatever, but no one was fighting. We'd have great socials. We'd go for coffees. Everyone was meeting each other's partners and stuff. And it was that kind of vibe. It was that kind of vibe, which I don't think was the same with every team
Yeah.
that I've heard stories of.
Mm.
But that was what it was like from my experience when I was at Exeter.
Yeah. I mean, like if I was to distill that down, and correct me if I'm wrong, that sounds like for you, like you felt like you were a part of something and what you were doing every day mattered.
For
And
sure.
for me, like that is kind of culture in some ways summarized. Like there's all different intricacies of like how that comes together via like coffees, via big boozy nights
Mm,
out, via like whatever you might do with that team. But people want to feel a part of something, and that they're giving their life to something that matters. And like we're a purpose driven business. So people are here not for the pay, not because we've got flashy offices, not because any of that stuff. They're here because they believe that they can sit in that seat for however many hours a day, and what they do might go on to move the needle in the business. And for us, that actually has a positive impact on people's lives. So I think like I agree with you. Like I think the same about the word community and culture. Like
mm.
culture is the buzzwords for inside businesses at the moment. Community is the buzzword for businesses outside of like, oh my
Yeah.
God, people are talking about community. We need to do something. We need to be a part of it. But my whole life, I've always tried to approach in the same way, and that's like through authenticity. And these people, I'm not standing up saying like, guys, we need to work hard and we need to do this because, this reason or that reason. I'm doing it because I love doing it, and I think that energy probably transcends to the team. We have a group, we have 7 values in the business, which kind of like are about how we operate, how we treat people, all those sorts of things that we really sit down with everybody on day one, and we're like, hey, you need to learn these off by heart. We do a test once a month to make sure everyone like learns them, not just what the words are, but also like what they actually mean.
Mm,
Um, I love the saying that we took from Saracens. Ben Earls, and been a friend of the brand for a long time. He's actually an investor now. He came to talk for us about high performing teams, and they have a saying at Saracens that we have now adopted in the business of like, we will treat you unbelievably well, but in return you will work unbelievably hard. And I think that's just like such a good like mutual contract between people of like, hey, we're here to have fun. We'll do coffees together. We'll do fikas when we can. We'll have days off if we hit sales targets or whatever.
mm,
But in return, like you will work hard here, because if we don't work hard, we won't be anything, and that's not fun. And one of our values on the wall over there is results win championships. And the thing I say to the team about this is, in all the like semi-successful teams I was in, we didn't like win any trophies or anything like that, but the seasons I remember being really great seasons. I can't tell you how many times we had to go out on a Tuesday and smash each other, or how cold it was for the forward scrum session on the Thursday. We're all stood around up in Newcastle. Or I can't tell you any of that, but I can tell you about us winning. And I say to these guys of like, exactly your analogy. I love it from the Netflix founder about, we're not a family, we're a high performing sports team. And I talk to the team about that, and I say like, families don't, that families aren't going to cut each other. Families also aren't going to hold each other accountable in the same way. Families aren't going to drive standards, all these sorts of things. And actually winning is the funnest thing that we can do here, right? And if we all pussyfoot around and don't hold each other to account, or don't drive timelines, or don't drive standards, we're not going to win, and that's not going to be fun. The funnest thing that we can do is, over the next 10 years, build a category defining 100 million revenue business. And we'll look back over this last 10 years, and we won't even think about that time that someone called me out for being late to a meeting, or someone said to me, hey, you told me you were going to give me that by this date and you did it. We won't remember any of that. We'll remember the fun ride that we had, and everybody talking around going, wow, Puresport, that group were able to execute on that mission. They impacted thousands, or if not millions, no, they impacted millions of people's lives, and they inspired a movement of people around this philosophy of for the long run. So yeah, I think like culture has to be authentic, but the biggest thing that I say is, culture is not top down. Culture lives within the group. All the probably the best like standards organization was I went to when I was at England Sevens. I mean, slightly easier because a much smaller group of people, but it was everything. It was, hey, you're meant to be here 5 minutes before gym because we do a stretch before. It's like, hey, we're meant to be wearing white socks. You've got blue socks on. And what I say to these guys is like, hey, we're a group of 20 here. And if the only person holding standards is me, it's completely not scalable, right? And if you guys are only doing stuff because you're scared that I'm going to get angry, that we're cooked from the start. If you guys are all having these little intercommunication things about standards, that's how standards lives within an organization. Because then the next 20 people we employ, it's not Dan saying it, it's Lucy, it's Julia, it's Hamish. It's like, hey, no, that's not how we do things here. Or like, hey, if you say you're going to do something, then you stay until you get it done. And that's how culture really breeds in an organization. If everybody in the group believes in it, and they're the ones sort of passing the Olympic flag, if you like.
I love that. Yeah,
My opinion. This is my
yeah,
opinion.
yeah. I mean, that's why I want to talk to you. I want to know your opinion. And yeah, you got it right there. When I was describing my time at Extra, essentially it all boils down to being part of a common goal. And I also had a great time because we were winning. And as you said, winning trumps everything, right? That's what you remember. And yeah, I think that's super powerful. So you said
One
you're
thing I would just say on that, Pete, just to round that out, is like, because this was also a tough transition thing for me, right? And maybe similar for you in the environments that you've talked about. When we sit around in that rugby changing room, we think everyone's so different. You're like, oh God, he likes this music and he dresses like this and he likes drinking cider and that person only likes Guinness. So we think we're all like so different. But when you step into the real world, you realize actually, oh my gosh, we were like 95% similar.
yeah, yeah,
We all had
yeah,
very similar interests. We all like smashing each other. You're surrounded by the zero point 0.1 most competitive people in the country who
hundred
all want
percent.
to win, all that sort of stuff. Then you go and you jump into a business environment and you've got 19-year-olds who are fresh out of school, don't want to go to uni, through to 55-year-old dads of three who are like right at the other end of that life. And then you sit there and you go, holy shit, like this is different,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think like there's a big thing about you need to find out what motivates people. People are either motivated by doing something that's really like purposeful, like they feel like they're really part of that. They're either really driven by money, or they're really driven by like their own like self progression of like feeling like they're moving up the ranks and progressing and like things like that, as well as a number of other things. But I think those three things are key things for people. Whereas in rugby, that we want to win games because we want to get paid more money and we want to win trophies. Like that's actually really like easy. The other thing about professional sport, which is a tough, is you rock it on a Monday, you set a goal, you train that week, you play on the Saturday. On the Saturday afternoon, you know whether you executed on the goal or not, both as a team and individually. You think about it on the Sunday, you roll back in on the Monday, you look back on it, and then you just set the new goal for the week ahead. And that's quite tough and that's quite easy in rugby because it's like it's so black and white, right? We're planning to win this game, we win or we lose. I played well, I didn't. The team won, we didn't. Let's review it, let's move on. And in business, that's a lot tougher because, like, a lot of the goals are quarterly or some of them are annual, or like getting everybody bought into this like short-term thing that actually like feels like it's moving the needle for people. It's just not as easy. And, one of the things they talk about that players talk about, that's a tough transition out of sport is that we go through like, I think it was like on average a professional sports person has up to like 50 highs a year, or there's something like that.
Mm.
Whereas somebody in the general public sort of has like 3 or 4, a promotion, a baby, a big birthday party, or whatever. And so people talk about that being quite a tough transition. But I think one of the things they don't necessarily talk about is like just that black and white nature of what success looks like, and like when you come in and say to me like, right, Dan, your annual sales targets to grow sales by 60% this year. I know you wouldn't come and say that to me, but somebody says that to me. It's like, shit, how do we break this down into bite-sized chunks so everybody can come in on a Monday, feel like they're moving the needle. It's tangible enough to go to the big goal, but it's not so far-fetched that everyone feels like, oh, that's not really attainable or achievable for me. And I think that is one of the benefits of sport, but also you lose 5 games in a row. That's also a tough place to be. So that's the other side of it.
You get the highs and the lows, and
Mm.
with sport, I'd say same as you. The feedback loop is a lot shorter. Like
Yeah.
as you said, every week you know whether you've succeeded or failed.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what I would say is, one thing I love saying is don't take the highs too high, don't take the lows too low,
Mm-hmm.
because when you win 5 on the bounce, you're top of the world. You're absolutely buzzing. Bonuses are coming through, boys are happy, socials on. when you lose five on the bounce, it feels like the darkest place in the world. You know, contract negotiations coming up, boys getting dropped left, right, and center. It's not a happy place to be. So for you then, Dan, as an entrepreneur and a successful entrepreneur, having your history and what we've just spoken about, how do you kind of manage those highs and lows in business?
Hmm. It's tough. I wouldn't call myself a successful entrepreneur, by the way. You might see it like that, but I wake up every day and think I'm dying. Um, so, uh, so I think one thing, and sorry, I know if anyone who doesn't like sport, they're going to hate this, but um, I think one thing that was always interesting, right, is in those bad rugby environments, or when you think about bad coaches, and you're there and you're like, why are they doing that? Like, why are they like, for example, you lose 3 games in a row, and on the Saturday you guys have missed 20 tackles, and you're just going through a bit of a bad patch as a team. And then you come on the Monday and they're yelling about you being crap at tackling. It's like, right, we're going out to smash each other, and like, get the tackle bags, we're smashing each other. And all the boys are like, what? We're not bad at tackling. Like, we're just having a bit of a bad run here. We don't need to go. That's gonna lower morale. Right. And I used to always be like, why would they do that? It makes no sense. But now that I'm in this world and I'm playing more of a coach, like I said before, is what's really tough in leadership is when you have a lot of downward pressure coming on you, for leaders to absorb that pressure and distort it to the team in a way that's both motivating, but also that allows people to know that, like, we're under pressure here, we need to get results. And I think back to those coaches now, I'm thinking like, oh, we're moving down the league, the board's probably angrier than the chairman, the ticket sales are down, and they just couldn't absorb the pressure, so they just piled it on to the players. And I used to be like, oh, I'm never going to be like that, like, and now that I've had that experience, and I'd like to think that I'm still not, because I've had that experience, but it's very difficult. You miss a couple sales months, you've got the board pressure, you've got cash pressure, you've got all these things that aren't going right. To absorb that yourself, it's a very lonely place. To then pass that down to the team, like last year, we never had more than 3 weeks cash in the bank for 8 months.
Fucking hell.
We were just on this rolling cycle of, we pay everyone's salaries and our end of month payments. We survive for 3 weeks, then we get another loan at the end of the month to pay the following month, and it was just like that. And like, these people wouldn't even really known about that. They knew we needed to make targets. They knew we were under pressure. They knew we were trying to grow. But like, that is a lonely place to be. Like, thinking about that all the time. So I think like, in terms of like managing those highs and lows, like, for me, the greatest leaders are people who are consistent, and that is people who are both consistent in their performance, and that every week you can just rely on them. They're going to be consistent. They're with, no matter how the team's going, no matter the external pressure on the organization, that person's showing up and they're putting that consistent foot forward all the time. But they're also consistent in how they lead. Like, what people don't like in any organization is people who are like this, because it puts people on edge of like, shit, what version am I getting to? Am I getting yelled at, or am I getting a pat on the back? So like, it's very hard to, like, you're never going to be flat, but trying to be like that. Like, I'm someone who's very a high energy person. I come up every day and I believe that we're going to have a good day. And people feel that from me for when I come up the stairs and I say, like, what's up, team? Or like, right, how we doing? How we doing? We do all the fist bumps to everyone and stuff. If I come up and I'm like, head in the sand, like, oh God, I'm having a bad day. We've got no cash, whatever. Everyone's looking around like, holy shit, he's not on it today. Like, what's happening? So I think, in terms of managing those highs and lows, it's just like, I think experience teaches you. I think, the thing about it's like, it's super difficult. Anyone leading a business right now, as a CEO or entrepreneur or whatever, like, it's like a lonely island, because you're like that connector to the external stakeholders, depending on like what kind of an organization you are. So I've got like all my board management, all the shareholders, all those people that we're trying to, make a return for. And then you've also got the team, and then there's always dynamics with the team of like people underperforming and things that you might not speak about with everybody and those sorts of things. So it's super, super difficult. But yeah, just kind of, I think the more you go out and try and fetch other experiences, read people, listen to podcasts, I think it's going to set you up better for it, because I think when you think you're the only one going through something, it's 1,000,000% you're not. So just trying to like find those things.
Yeah. However, I would say as a CEO, it's probably a bit more lonely than other people going through their own stuff.
Mhm,
So on that, then, like you said, you obviously can't soundboard your business problems onto your staff, probably.
mhm, mhm,
Who do you soundboard your problems with? Who do you share these experiences with? Who do you have around you to help you get through these tough
mhm.
times?
Yeah. So you know what's actually so funny is and is I used to be like someone who like I think CEOs get a lot of hate, right? Because it's like they're probably the people that get paid the most in most, not in startups always, but in most scenarios, like they got nice cars, they got this, and like you always hear of like, oh, the Starbucks CEO gets paid $20 million a
Yeah,
year,
yeah,
and
yeah.
then there's a lot of like hate towards that. Like, why does someone need $20 million? That's paid way too much. And I didn't used to be someone who was like that, but I used to always think like, oh, like, come on, guys, like, this, you don't have to be a dick all the time on when you hear about some stories. Now I'm honestly like, mate, CEOs don't get paid enough. You could tell me that Tim Cook's getting paid 100 million a year, and
Not
I would
enough.
tell you, I would say it's not enough, man, because of that lonely place. Like, and I think as the I think an answer to the question about that, like, it's actually been transformational for me to get a business mentor. I wasn't someone who like necessarily resisted that. I just didn't like couldn't find like I didn't know who would that would be, and I've ended up getting this guy called Andreas, he was a very successful consumer goods private equity career, and now he's like the CEO of a big African supermarket, and I got introduced to him actually from a friend of mine who I played touch with on a Tuesday night. He said, "Oh, you need to meet Andreas. He'll be an animal for you," kind of thing. And it's genuinely been transformational. And I actually had a bit of a rough experience of I really wanted like I wouldn't say like one of my rugby idols, but like someone who transitioned well out of rugby, maybe to like do it like a Lawrence Dallaglio or a
Mm.
Brian O'Driscoll, or I spoke to Johnny Wilkinson's agent or whatever. More not like as a business mentor, but just someone who like could maybe like help on like that transition side that we were talking about, and like someone who kind of been through what I was going through, but I didn't manage to get one of them anyway. But anyway, I got this guy Andreas, and it's genuinely been transformational because you can go and unload like your problems or your thoughts, all that sort of stuff. Also, our chairman Stephen now. He's also very, very helpful. He does a lot of like NED leadership, mentorship stuff. I meet with him for 45 minutes every Monday, and we just unpack a few things. And that again, that's almost been life changing for me. So if you're on the fence about doing it, anybody out there, I highly recommend it. But it does have to be the right person, because yeah, I think that's really important.
What's one thing that Andreas has kind of enlightened you on that you weren't expecting from having a business coach?
His ability to listen to you talk about something and distill it into a one-line action about what you need to do is like unbelievable. Like, yeah, I mean, he's been on loads of like
Should be a marriage counselor.
huge, yeah, huge boards and like stuff like that. And I mean, the CEO, the supermarket he's the CEO of now is yeah, they're going to do 1 billion revenue, and he's got 5,000 employees or whatever. So he's like, he's like up there. It's funny actually because when I got introduced to him, we were talking about this other guy who we were calling this a killer. We're like, oh, this guy's a killer. And the guy from Touch, he knew him, and he's like, yeah, no, he is a killer, but you need to meet Top Killer, which is this guy Andreas. And then he introduced us, and we hit it off. And so I think like the thing, I can't actually share what this thing was, but there was a situation where we were going through like a bit of a difficult time, and I went and spoke to him about this, and he's like, "Oh, you need to go and do this." And I was like, "What? Like that is so bold to go in and like do that." And he's like, "No, no, I had this thing when he was on the board at Wagamama's, or like something like this happened to me in the past. And all that's going to happen is over the next 3 months, you're going to flirt around the line with this, and that's where you're going to get to. You're going to have to go and have this tough conversation in 3 months' time. So I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen. So walk in there and do that tomorrow." And it was so bold to do that, what we did, and but it was right. It was completely the right thing. It ended up like unlocking that big problem for us and stuff. So I think like having someone who's been down that road, before, who's just got experiences that you haven't got yet, or been exposed to situations that you just won't have it this early in your business career, I think is probably the one thing that I think's been really great.
Yeah, I think you're just talking to someone who's had the experience and has gone through these lessons before you. So
Mhm.
hopefully he's just saving you time, right? Time and
Yeah,
difficult choices.
yeah.
Which I mean,
Actually,
as a
really.
CEO of a fast-growing company, it's exactly what you and your team want, right?
Yeah, I'm actually meeting him tonight. Like, it's just like, it's nothing formal. We go for dinner, we have a
Mm.
couple of beers, we sit around, we talk for a couple of hours. It's nothing like, regimented. We come in for like a business meeting or anything like that. But yeah, as I say, it's been transformational.
And Dan, I'm really interested to know because like I can imagine your career in rugby, and you mentioned you traveling to the UK to want to play cricket, which is funny because I did the exact same at the same age to New Zealand to play rugby in North Shore. Played for a team called East Coast Bays, and had the very similar experience. I'd spent my gap year there before going to university, wanting to be professional and all that sort of stuff. So it was really fun to hear. When you're going through this sports career, did you always know that getting into business or being an entrepreneur was the path that you wanted to go down, or was there something else that you had in mind?
Yeah, no, it was. So when I was at, I first of all went to a club called Old Crosslands in Halifax, which was there, and I just laid a few bricks, was a labourer kind of on the side, just pulling a few pints sort of job. When I moved to Otley, I was then given a job with a local businessman at Otley, another club in Yorkshire, and he had his fingers in loads of pies. And that was like probably my first exposure to like, someone who was running a few businesses. They had a
Mm.
few different things on the go. We ended up starting a few businesses together while we were there, some opportunities that we saw. So that was my first like real taste of it. Then when I got an opportunity to go up to Newcastle, I was playing really well at Otley. They rang me up, asked me if I wanted to play an A-League game at Northampton Saints at Franklin's Gardens. I was like, oh my God, Franklin's Gardens. Went down there and played that game. It was actually so funny. Do you know Temm Harrison, the guy who
Uh,
played at Northampton for
yeah, yeah,
ages?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I was playing open side for Newcastle that night. He was playing open side for Northampton. He'd only kind of like just come over from New Zealand, and we played at the opposite schools in Rotorua. I was like,
Wow,
Teimana. Like, whoa. I was like, this is
small
mad.
world.
And so anyway, I played that game. I played really, really well. They then asked me to come up and be in the senior academy. But when I went up there, they only pay me 10 grand a year, and I'd been getting paid like 18 grand or something when I was working in the office. I was like, shit, it's quite a big, cut for me and whatever. So what I ended up doing was I traveled down on the days off back to Leeds to work. And then I was also working sort of like semi-remotely up there on stuff I could be doing. And I did that pretty much throughout my whole rugby career. There was 18 months where I didn't do it because I thought I wanted to focus on rugby, but it actually made me a worse rugby player, funny enough. But so boys are around playing PlayStation or doing this, and I was like,
Classic.
jumping in the car and going down to work. So, but the main reason for that is because I knew I wasn't actually that good at rugby. Um, like I really loved it, and if I had a chance to play professional, I knew that that had a timeline on it, which if I could do it for a year or 3 years or 5 years, who knows what that could be, but it had a timeline. So I needed to keep tabs on the real world and what was going on. And I I think for me, like I ended up doing it for 8 years, and I think for me, what was like semi pleasing about my rugby career, I would say, is like I achieved as much as I think I could have achieved with my, skill set and capability. And I wasn't really big enough for the Premiership, especially back then. The Premiership maybe I'd probably actually suit it a little bit better now if you like really need a line out back row. But back then it was like really big guys, just all about gain line and stuff. So I probably achieved what I was capable of, which was pleasing. I got some Premiership games. I got to play for England Sevens. That was all like really, really great. But I always knew it wasn't necessarily forever. And I knew that business did give me a buzz. And I think that one of the things that I talk about often is like the people who perform at the best, the highest level, I think one common theme with them is they always look like they're free, like they're operating freely. Like when you think about Messi's or Federer's or Jordan's, all these sorts of people, there's like that freedom about them. And I have a bit of a opinion or thesis that like that's That's because they're just like in their flow. And I think that that flow comes for different things for different people. For me, I played my best rugby when I also had business to look forward to after training, and that provided me freedom. For some boys or some people, it's family, you know, like when they have a kid or when they start getting a family, and that brings a lot of joy to their life. For some people, it's religion, you know, like that gives them a lot of like freedom and things. So I do really believe in that. And I actually believe we would have better sports people if everybody understood that and realized that, like, hey, your next injury isn't the end of your life, or contracts, or like, you know, all these you know, sorts of things. But yeah, I always knew it was going to come to an end, so I enjoyed the business side of it.
I love that, man. I love that. And I think for that transition that everyone talks about from a sports perspective is always so tricky. A lot trickier for some people, I'd say, than others. Some people that I would say that I knew that had reached the heights of rugby, so international rugby, um, sometimes when they're injured or they're transitioning, it's even harder because, yeah, they've probably got more money, but sometimes their identity was based on being a rugby player.
Mm-hmm.
And so the higher you fly, the harder you fall, right? Whereas, I mean, for me personally, I never reached those highs. So the transition was not easy because I still loved the lifestyle of a professional athlete and a professional rugby player. I still miss it, to be honest. But it's always tricky, right? Everyone's story is very different, and I think it's super smart of you to be doing that whilst you're doing this pro sports career, because so frequently people just go for coffees, play Xbox, play PlayStation, and nap. And
Yeah. Yeah, so my
it's
mindset on
tough.
that is like, hey guys, it's going to be tough. It's been tough ever since the kind of backdoor era of like getting shown into the city because you're a professional rugby player closed about 7, 8
Yeah.
years ago. Unless you're a line now, that's not happening. So here's the starting point. It's going to be tough. So if you embrace the toughness and you do the work, it's going to be less tough. If you play PlayStation and drink coffees and play Xbox on Wednesdays and Sundays and Mondays, don't complain to me about it being tough because you knew it was going to be that. So anybody getting to their last year and be like, I'm trying to get one more year because I'm not ready for that transitional year. It's like, bro, you known this is coming. stop, stop stretching it out. So I think that like I don't have so like where there's this whole like, oh my gosh, it's so tough as professional sports people. Like we need to help them better. We need to help them with the transition. I'm actually like a bit down the other end of that. Of like, you know, I think you can help people who are willing to help themselves. But if people are just like stringing on for one more year and then saying, "Oh, I'll do that," then like the people I know who got well set up, who did little degrees, who did that, like they're flourishing in the outside
Mm.
world because they embrace the change. You know, yes, as I said to you at the start, like there's a little bit of toughness around like the people you're surrounded by, the competitiveness element, the like, you know, not like having banter with everybody every day, you know, kind of thing. Like everyone struggles with that. There's a struggle, I think, of like the lack of physical element when you've been like so close to
Yeah,
this
yeah.
like testosterone development. I think that is tough. But all the people I know who got well set up are doing well, and all the people I know who haven't are finding it tougher. So it's a pretty common science in it.
And there's enough awareness around it these days, isn't it? Like there's enough people talking about the transition and getting yourself set up that people should be acting on it.
Yeah.
Dan, I'm very conscious that I haven't actually asked you or spoken about Pure Sport as a company itself, like
Mhm.
what you guys do. I spoke about it in the intro. I know the company, but I want to hear it from the horse's mouth, Dan. So can you describe to me, the listeners, what is Pure Sport? What do you do? What do you sell? And what's the vision?
Yeah. So as I said to you at the start, that like finding premise of Pure Sport was around this like shortcut culture, and we're big believers in in Pure Sport that if you put good things in your body, you exercise, and you have meaningful social connection with other humans, you're going to be 99.9% of the way to being healthy. Like, it's not actually that complicated, but there's so much noise and hype and false promises and all those sorts of things, especially in sports supplementation. It's like the most flooded category with like, take this and you'll lose weight, or this is going to do that for you, and all those sorts of things. So it was a category that we're very passionate about, like coming through sport. And it's also a category that we saw a huge opportunity in because it's rife with low quality products and, you know, lots of brands who aren't doing things the right way. But also, if you look at every other if you look at every other category, all of the biggest winners, the Nikes, the L'Oreals, the Apples, the Teslas, all those brands, they kind of have two things in common. Number one is they do have great products. You can't get by without great products. But the second thing is they have emotional connection to the brands. People are drawn to them on an emotional level. And when you look at sports supplements, it's not that. Like if I asked you to name some characteristics of Nike or Apple or Coca-Cola, you're going to talk about things like trust and quality and like these sorts of things. If I said to you my protein, bulk nutrition and whatever, you're going to say like discounts, cheap,
Yeah,
low
yeah, yeah.
quality, all those, sort of things. So we really saw an opportunity there of like, how has someone not come through this category with like an emotional connection to the brand? And that's what we wanted to build. And people said to us, oh, it can't be done. Like it's a discount category. People aren't drawn to, storytelling and all these sorts of things. And we were like, well, that's what gets us up in the morning. So, we're in essence, we're a sports supplement business that sells hydration, energy, recovery, and performance supplements. But I think that what we really sell is a feeling for people that they're part of something bigger. And we sort of talk about how the category is full of hype and noise and people yelling. And we don't think the category needs more of that. We think the category needs leadership. So we're trying to approach it in a way through trust, transparency, quality, and a real our business really changed about 16 months ago when I guess this is kind of a little story in itself. Like I'm a big believer that businesses really need a North Star. And we knew that ours was like, seeing a world in which longevity was kind of defined by your health and not shortcuts. And like, we knew what that looked like, but we weren't really sure what we were rallying people around. We talked about like inspired by nature. We talked about like movement as medicine. We talked about a few of these things. And about 16 months ago, we landed on For the Long Run. And we landed on that via, first of all, thinking about it for a campaign. But when we put the word into WhatsApp and you typed out For the Long Run, every scenario in which we used it, it was so perfect for Puresport, around like commitment, longevity, like all these sorts of things. And now that's our business philosophy. Like it's the way we think about our products. It's the way we, think about, how we're going to grow. It's the way we think about how we treat people. It's the way we think like all the most meaningful things in life, come from. And I think what's interesting about it is like, it drives a lot of emotion in people. One of the things I say to people, like consumers don't necessarily know this, but I guess I know this because I love it, is all the greatest sayings, the just do it's, the give you wings, the I'm loving it. One thing that they have in common is there's like that emotional connection to them. But the thing that they really have in common is that they mean something different to every single person that hears it. Like when you say just do it, it'll mean something different to everybody in the room. Some people will think, oh, just go on this run. Or some people will think, oh, just eat a healthy lunch, or just do this, or just do that. But in every single situation, it means what Nike wants it to mean. And that's the same with For the Long Run. When we say that, some people think about commitment, some people think about longevity, some people think about running, but in every scenario, it means what we want it to mean. So there's that emotional connection to it happening without us defining what that is. And that's actually something that's like quite unique and very special. So yeah, as I say, in essence, we're a sports supplement business that's passionate about inspiring a movement under this umbrella For the Long Run, and we make the highest quality products. We always try and make them as natural or 100% natural where we can. But what we're really trying to do is inspire a group of people to get out there and exercise and have meaningful relationships with each other, and that's why we're such a community first brand.
I love that, man. And when I first saw For the Long Run, my honest thoughts were I thought it was fucking genius, because instantly I thought, yeah, longevity, all that sort of stuff, but also for the long run. Like everyone's obsessed with their long runs on Sundays, right? And with the whole running community and the running movement, and you guys selling electrolytes and all these other products, I was like, oh, for the long run, that's pretty fucking good. So kudos on that one. And I know
Appreciate it.
earlier we
I didn't come up
mentioned,
with it, by the way, but
yeah, well, I take
the
credit,
team
take
did a
credit.
great job.
um, we mentioned earlier about culture and community, and you just spoke there again about community, and that's what you guys are trying to build. I've been following you, as I said at the start, on social media for ages now, the company Puresport. And so I've seen some of the things that you guys are doing around community building, like genuine community building. Share with us what those things are at the company, and where you see them going in the next 5-10 years.
So I think it comes back to this place of authenticity, right? Of like, when everyone starts here at Puresport, we give them two books. We give them Legacy by James Kerr, the All Blacks book. It's all about culture and the All Blacks and stuff, but it transcends into a business world really well. The second one is Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And in Start With Why, they talk about this thing. He talks about inside out marketing versus outside in marketing. And an example of that is, we came out of COVID, we're professional rugby players. We were now sitting in a WeWork 10 hours a day, bent over our laptops. And we're like, this just doesn't feel that good. Arms were shrinking, weight was falling off us, and weren't doing any fitness or anything like that, just obsessed about trying to grow, trying to survive. So, let's just go for a lunchtime run. And we used to run 2K down to a coffee shop in Soho, have a coffee, and then run 2K back. And that used to feel like a lot back then. And then we had a few customers who who worked in the offices close by. They're like, hey, I think you're like in King's Cross where I am. Can I come and do this run with you? And then there was 3 or 4 of us. Then there was 5 or 6 of us. And then we're like, oh, hey, maybe we should show up at a park. Showed up at a park, and then one thing led to another. And then, we grew what is the biggest run club in the UK. But it's come from a place of authenticity. So, inside out marketing is like, hey, let's do this thing because it feels good to us. If there's a knock-on effect that it's positive and it has a positive benefit to your marketing, that's inside out. Outside in marketing would be one of these big businesses looking at Puresport and going, hey, it looks like Puresport's growing really fast. What are they doing differently? Oh, they've got these run clubs. Oh, well, run clubs must mean that you sell more products. We want to sell more products. Let's start a run club. And that's what outside in marketing looks like, of like looking at what's the outcome you want and how can you reverse engineer that. So, like for us, like the running was like a personal thing for us, as I said, but I think like one of the most powerful things in the world is the intersection between people and exercise. And whether that's team sport, whether that's going on a run together, whether that's, watching a game of sport happen live and like the crowd like really being invested in that. I think it's such a special thing that we were a part of. And, all of my greatest friends have come through people that I exercise with. There's some of my greatest memories of rugby are like, on the try line. Like I remember this game. We played Stade Francais in the European Challenge Cup, and Mornay Stain was playing and all these guys for Stade. And we're playing up at Newcastle. It was like a Friday night, like crap weather, and we're on the line defending, and they didn't score and the game was over. We won like 21-20 or something. And like that feeling of like doing something really hard with your mate side by side and getting this result, I'll never forget it in my life. And you have similar small experiences there. Like we just go for a run together around Battersea Park on a sunny day, and we're, putting some work in, like a little fist bump afterwards, go for a coffee. Like there's something magical about that. So we were just obsessed by the infectious energy of what that was creating. People coming down, meeting each other, forming new friendship groups. I think the thing that I loved most about the community and like how we had their own space at the time was like when people walked through the door, often they didn't know what they were capable of achieving when they did, compared to when they left a year later and they'd done their first half marathon, or they'd done a 10K, or they'd met a group
That's
of friends
awesome.
and things like that. And like that's like really special. So, we've really leaned into that. We're now trying to like be a bit more big picture, like because we recognize that when we started doing run clubs, there was none. So there wasn't none. There was still your like official track Harriers clubs, Belgrade Harriers, like all of that sort of stuff. But there wasn't like social first run clubs really back then. Now there's over 2,000. It's like they're everywhere. So now we're trying to be like and we got a lot of consumer feedback of like, hey, I really love Puresport. I love the mission. I love For the Long Run, but I can't come to your run clubs in London, so it's tough for me to feel a part of it. So now we're trying to think a little bit more big picture. You might have seen this campaign we just did recently of the support crew, where we went and just like celebrated a whole lot of individual runners. We did an amazing thing for London Marathon, which maybe you saw and stuff like that. So
What's the thing that you did when you put the sorry to interrupt, the petrol pumps out? Which one was that?
London Marathon, yeah.
That was sick.
Yeah,
So cool. So cool.
yeah. It was that was awesome. And yeah, when I said to you before, like the thing I love. If anyone asks me what I love most in business, I actually just put this on LinkedIn. The thing I love most in business is being in a room and someone comes up with an idea, right? And you hear it for the first time. And then a period of time transpires of us getting around that idea, whether it's a campaign, whether it's a product launch, whether it's a t-shirt, like whatever it might be. And a group of people come together to make that idea come to life. You see it come to life, and then the world enjoys it. And that is that is my favorite thing in business, of being in this room here when someone came in and said, hey, I want to make a petrol station, but that we serve electrolytes out of. And you think, oh, that sounds a bit whack, but it could be quite cool. And then we did it, we built it, we put it out to the world. And then the joy on these guys' faces when the whole world reacted to it in the way that you did across socials and LinkedIn or whatever, they're all buzzing. Like, that gives me the biggest buzz. And that happens across campaigns. You know, even when we're making running gels at the moment, energy gels, like seeing all that happen, the packaging designs, all of that. We put it into like our closed ambassador group yesterday. They're all buzzing about it. And then when those first ones start going out the door and people start using them, enjoying them, it starts having a positive impact on their runs, you know, their exercise. That is the coolest thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I think it's such a cool story, and I'm so happy to get you on, Dan. Honestly, it's real great lessons, and I'm sure that lessons that anyone can take, whether it's business, life, whatever. Dan, I want to ask you, as a person, how would you like to be remembered from people that interact with you?
How would I like to be remembered? I've always had this like, sorry, it feels like the reception's gone a little bit bad. Is it okay for you?
I've got you. I've got you.
Yeah, okay. Um, I've always had this like little chip on my shoulder that I feel like I'm the kind of person that, oh, no, I'm not the kind of person. I feel like I can leave an impact on the world, you know, like I feel like that's always kind of like been something that I've wanted to do with it, like how I've come through my childhood or been involved in teams and all that sort of stuff. So I really have that like feeling about my own, you know, I'm not very holistic kind of person, but my own like personal destiny, that I'm someone that I think can leave a really positive impact on the world. I think how like I would like to be remembered is, you know, I said before, like I think when I want people to interact with me, I quite like, I would like to think people find my energy quite infectious. You know, of like, oh god, that's a guy who's really passionate about what he's doing and how he's going about it, and um, you know, kind of what, as I said before, like in terms of my skill set, like throughout rugby, sport, all those sorts of things, I was never the most, didn't have the most talent, but I just worked so hard. Like that's always been my thing. And through that, I think I've become really, really resilient. And like pure sports stared death in the face like 4 or 5 times, like, and not just like, maybe you're going to die, like we're going to die within a week, you know, and you're like figuring out a way and whatever. So I think if you asked anyone like, oh, what's Dan's number one skill? I think that they would say like, oh God, that dude is just so resilient. He'll just find a way no matter what to figure stuff out, and he just won't die. So I think like I would, how I'd like to be remembered is someone who left their mark on the world with like infectious energy, but did something that mattered. You know, I think I got asked during the investment process this year about if in 10 years' time there was a title in the New York Times, you had the front page of the New York Times, what would that say? And I like was like 5 seconds. I was like, oh, how pure sport inspired a global movement for the long run. And I think that's quite unique about what we're doing is we have a genuine positive impact on people's lives, which I know can't be said the same for every company. And the more we work, the more we inspire, the more products we sell, the more people we impact. And that is kind of like a thing that really motivates me. So yeah, someone with infectious energy who left their mark on the world by, you know, having a positive impact on people's lives, I'd say would be a nice little tombstone.
That's awesome. And I think that's also a great question. I'm probably going to steal that for my future podcasts about the New York Times.
Yeah.
So Dan, the last question I normally ask my guests on the podcast, as you know, the podcast is called Abnormal. It's for normal people who want to do abnormal things, and that can be very subjective. As we've spoken about earlier in the call, just do it means something different to everyone that hears it. For people listening that want to do something abnormal in their lives, what would your one piece of advice be to them?
So funny. The abnormal thing when you message me is so funny. There used to be this saying, and The Mike Delaney, he was an All Black fly half, and he came to Newcastle for a couple of years. He used to always joke about how I wasn't wired up right. He used to be like, mate, that boy Timmy, he's just not wired up right. And it's like something that's kind of like followed me around about not being normal. So when you sent me that, that was the first thing I thought about. I think it's a really tough question because I think it's so unique to what people want in their life. Like, I want to grow a £1 billion business, and to do that is unbelievably difficult, and you have to go to all sorts of dark places and figuring things out, and it's a horrible ride. But that horrible ride for me is great. I work over 60 hours a week. I'm in the office on the weekends, like all that sort of stuff. But I love it. I'll never complain about that. And when people say to me like, oh, you work too much or this or that, it's kind of like what I said to you before. The more I work, the more impact I can have. So I think that's a positive thing. But I know for a lot of people, that would be like, oh, that's so toxic. Like, why would he work that much? Like, no one should be doing that, sort of. But that's the outcome that I want. So, and that's what's driving me to be abnormal, because I know to do that, it needs abnormal work rate to get an abnormal result. But I think it's just like really finding out what those things are that somebody wants, what's the outcome that they want, and then like really figuring out how do you get there via that. There's a really great sports psychologist, I can't remember what his name is, but he talks about, right, what do you want, how bad do you want it, and what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? And he deals with a lot of Olympic people, and people are saying, I want to win a gold medal. He's like, okay, cool. That's what you want. How bad do you want that? Well, I want it really bad. Or like, what are you willing to sacrifice to get there? Because I'll tell you what you have to sacrifice. You have to sacrifice your life for 16 years, most likely, showing up every single day, little stacking bricks, and maybe you get a chance at a gold medal. So he talks about, when they give me their goal, I just put it on the wall and say, that doesn't matter anymore. Now, what are you willing to do? So, I think as I'm trying to sort of maybe distill there, is like abnormal is different to everybody depending on what they're trying to achieve. But as I said right at the start, everything you want is on the other side of hard. And I think that is something that we're not as aware of in today's modern society, with we opening our phones and we think there's this quick fix or that shortcut, or Bitcoin's going to make us a millionaire, or we should move to Dubai because there's no tax, or whatever that might be. But that is the reality of life. So figure out what that is for you, figure out how you get there, and then be abnormal in your own way to make that happen.
Love it. Dan, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you're a busy man, and thank you for spending one of those hours on the podcast sharing your wisdom. So I really appreciate your time, man. And as I said, I've been following your journey for a long, long time now, and I cannot wait to follow it for a long, long time to come. So thank you again, man. Really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Peter. It's been great to be on.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Abnormal. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing to the channel and give us a 5-star review in whatever podcast platform you are listening or watching on right now, as it goes a long way to help growing the show. Thank you, and see you in the next one.